Mike, it's great to finally actually get to talk to you one-on-one here. And after months of being connected on LinkedIn and also reading your book, I appreciate taking the time out today to let me interview you.
Oh, Chris, I'm excited too. I always like giving back, and I think you're doing a great job at get sales tips and helping people grow their business. And I'm really excited to talk about you this morning as well.
Great, thanks, Mike. Hey, Mike, quick one before I get started. Usually, I ask people how people can get a hold of you so that they can reach out to you. So, what's how can people connect with you or contact you?
Sure. Most of my information is on mdkrause.com, mdkrause.com. And you can connect with me through Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, or send me an email through that. And that's usually the most benefits. Plus, it has a lot of blog articles and information to help your sales grow.
Perfect, good stuff. Quick one here for you. I was going through the book, and a lot of stuff you kind of reflect on your background. Can you just give us an understanding of what your background is, so that people can somewhat relate with where you've been and how you've gotten to where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. Chris, to complement your last point, to start off with my biography, is that was why I love sales. I am an entrepreneur caught in corporate life. And sales affords you that opportunity to set your own calendar or set your own goals and make ideally an uncapped income. So sales to me really afforded me that entrepreneur spirit in corporate life. And I think that resonates with a lot of your listeners and maybe even yourself, Chris. But a little bit about me. I've always been an entrepreneur, and I love business. I love the whole process of it. I had a landscape business when I was like 15 years old. I had it for 6 years, and I grew that to 120 accounts. I had six people working for me, and then I went to school. I went to St. Bonaventure University, so I sold that to go to school, and got my degree from St. Bonaventure, and then eventually I got my master's from Roberts Wesleyan, which is upstate New York, Rochester, New York. And the one thing that resonated with me over the years of being in corporate life, I've worked at companies like First Data, American Express, Ceridian, Bureau of National Affairs, and LexisNexis. And I was successful in all those sales operations. But then at the end, it's kind of like you have a wake up or an awakening, and it says that, it's not the job, it's me. And I did what I wanted to do. I sold $100 million in services. That was always my goal. And I always wanted to end up at the C level. So I ended up selling tax software to, excuse me, chief financial officers in large 2,500 employee company or more. And I really said at that point, I wanted to do something else, and I wanted to become my own sales consultant. So now what I do is I help organizations implement sales training, sales coaching, and sales process to move the needle and their organization. And I've been doing that for the last 6 years. So it was a way for me to get back to entrepreneurship. And I did really take my sales career as far as I wanted to go. I traveled all over the U.S. On average, I was traveling between 75 and 100 nights a year, which is not for the faint of heart. But after a while, you get used to travel. And I frankly enjoyed it a lot because it got to me to go in different areas that I never would. And I think that's just kind of circling back. That's why sales is really the last frontier when you're in corporate life. You can pretty much, you get to travel, you get to, see new people, and you get to make uncapped income and possibly set your own calendar. And it really is a great job if you look at it from that point of view.
Absolutely. Hey, one of the things when I started going through it, you talked about goals here in a sec. I'll get to that or a couple of minutes ago. I'll get to that in a second here. But in the introduction, what I really liked was the fact that you went into some statistics. And if you're like me, I'm a stats guy at heart. I just love stats. But it's crazy. I mean, just grabbing the book just to figure this stuff out. The just on the statistics alone, what you can glean from this is. First one you had was a lead that is called 5 minutes after it is generated is 22 times more likely to close than one that's called after 30 minutes. And then the average lead takes between 5 and 9 attempts to reach. Those who make changes in their sales process regularly achieve over 40% improvement in close rates. Part of the stuff, and then you start going into the fact that most people don't, most salespeople actually have what is it? 94% of sales veterans have fewer than 5 days of formal sales training. So give me your thought on on educating yourself and really how people might go about that sort of way stuff.
Well, that's one of my favorite stats is the 94%. When you really think about that, someone can spend 30 years in sales and frankly, become a manager and really have no training on sales.
That's crazy.
It really is. I mean, there's not like, yes, Dale Carnegie and some other people have sales courses, but again, it's not like you can go to a sales university and have a 4-year degree in sales. So and then there's over 20 million salespeople in the United States alone, and that's not including direct sales, such as Mary Kay and vitamins and what have you, and the direct sales. That's not even including that. And it's really unbelievable to see the lack of training out there. And that was one of the reasons to write this book, is because I know prospecting and cold calling is one of the most painful parts. And frankly, that's why people give up. They just can't handle the rejection and they can't do it. So in other words, the book can help you find a better mousetrap to sell more faster. And one other stat there too is the average person only calls into an account one time. It's about 85% of the people call in one time. Then the sales rep turns around to the sales manager or vice versa and goes, "Oh man, no one's calling me back. No one's doing that." And that's because sales itself is a game. You have to approach it as a game. How many times can I touch an opponent, or how many times? It's like watching a football game and it only was 1 second. Can you imagine? It's not, right? It's 3 hours. Most sporting events is 3 hours. And you need to put those 3 hours into your opponents and your team to really make the difference. Because in the beginning, and I equate this, it's one of my little Mike Krause theories, if you would, is the first word we're taught in life is what? No. No. Right? Our mothers, our fathers, our grandparents, that's what they tell us when we're a little baby. No. And I think somehow subconsciously it just resonates in us and we get a little bit scared. You have to accept no. You just have to accept it. You have to fight through it. And you really have to be diligent. And the book itself and the process is a diligent process. But the good news is, it was so great to have, the good news is it works. And the other day I got an accolade from one of my consulting customers, and it was a new person on the phone. He was about 39 years old, and he just started a job, and he was making, was lead generating. And he goes, "Mike, I can't believe and I call it your fired email worked." And it was so great because he copied the president of the company. And I said, "I'm so glad it worked for you." And the last, once you follow the process, you'll see that basically you're telling them maybe this isn't an opportunity for you. And then what your prospect does is it pulls back to you. And it's the most powerful thing, I think, in the book, is to all of a sudden stand up and not take the rejection anymore, but control the rejection.
Yeah. It is, all those stats that you have in here are amazing. It's, especially like when you say people call in once and then they never call back again. And I often make it I call it when the planets align. And it's like you may call in January and these guys may not need anything till November, right? And they will never remember you if you called 9, 10, 11 months ago, 2 years ago, whatever. And it's the consistency. That's one of the things that I tell a lot of people that I work with is it's the consistency. You have to just keep focusing in on a target market and just keep in front of them on a regular basis. And that's how you're going to end up getting the sale. And you are absolutely right. I mean, people should get your book just for the fact that it's a methodology, a process that they can follow.
It's a method to the madness, I like to call it, because you can go mad in sales, and because you're putting a lot of effort in, it cracks the egg. And I love what you just said, Chris. When the planets align, to complement that, 96% of your current prospects are not in the market to buy. 96%. So 4% are going to say, "Yep, I need you." So what are you going to do with the 96 that are basically in your pending account? You need to have a methodical process until those planets align. Otherwise, you're never going to move the sales process forward. Yes. And one other thing with regards to the process and the timing is that if you don't follow up, your competitor is, number one. And number two, another stat, It takes on average a year, and I know this is going to scare people and your listeners, but a year sales process. You have to set yourself up for that. Just what you just said, Chris. It might be spring, but they might be ready from fall, and you might have started calling them last fall. The sales process has really extended over time, and I attribute that to a couple of things. Number one, the economy. So people don't want to make that knee-jerk reaction anymore. Number two, the internet. People can just Google your competitors and get multiple quotes randomly and really do their due diligence. So those two things make the sales process a little bit longer than traditionally it used to be years ago. And you have to be prepared for that, and you have to do your due diligence.
Yeah, I think what is it? The Google ZMOT, the zero moment of truth. They were saying that the average person Googles, I think it's 10 accounts, or searches 10 accounts, or looks at 10 of your competitors before they start to even connect with you. It's amazing.
Yes.
It's changed everything, right?
It is, and the sales process keeps getting longer and longer. And to kick off back to where we started with the 5-minute lead, that's really the most powerful thing you can do as a salesperson. The minute that lead comes in, drop everything you're doing to call them back, because it puts you on the top of the list. Because what I call that is like a ticking time bomb. They've lit up into a website, or whatever your lead generation tools are, a postcard or anything, telemarketer, and they're waiting now. So they said, yes, I want Chris to call me. And now why isn't Chris calling me?
Yeah.
Why isn't he calling me? We live in Twitter land and texting land, and it's a ticking time bomb. So the faster you call back, the more likely you are to close that deal. That is probably another huge thing. Don't wait, just call, because it puts that relationship like, I'm going to be taken care of. They're
Yep.
interviewing us. And if you wait a day or two, they're like, oh, wow, I can't imagine if I was a customer how they're going to treat me when I come over. That's what they're thinking. And that's what we think as consumers. I know I do. I left a guy a message yesterday. I wanted to get some painting done in my house. And I'm thinking to myself, why hasn't he called me back yet? And now I'm thinking, I know other painters. I'm going to call other painters.
Exactly.
That's exactly what they're doing to us. And as salespeople, we have to be faster. We have to be faster.
It's one of those things. Hey, so you know what? One of the things I saw in here, and I love this. So, first of all, I look on the front of the book, and you got a quote here from Brian Tracy, and I was lucky enough to interview Brian Tracy a couple months back, and one of the first things I honed in on was goals. Right? Because he is the guru and master of goals. So the one thing that I appreciate that you put in the book was setting goals. So first of all, I'm going to ask you almost like the exact same things I asked Brian Tracy, which is, why set goals?
It's like going into the ocean and just trying to figure out where the next port is. You're randomly going to go out there, and it's going to be very frustrating, and you're not going to have any goal. You're not going to have any process. And I think sometimes, frankly, the most of us don't set goals, and it's sad. New Year's resolution comes and goes, and I might be close to the accuracy of this number, but I think it's like 90% of people that set New Year's resolutions, they're broken by the end of the month or something like that. It's crazy high.
I don't even think it would take that long. I think it's within the first week. Right?
I think you're right, Chris. I think it's within 3 weeks or 3 minutes or 3 days. It's something crazy. But what I also did read about goals is, funny enough, if you set your goals in December instead of getting on the bandwagon, you have an 85% success rate. And that's because you're really doing it because you want to do it, not because you think it's that time of the year to set some goals. I'm going to lose weight, stop smoking, be a better dad, be a better mom, whatever your goals are, make more money this year. And if you set your goals in December, I thought it was pretty interesting that you actually have a higher chance. But I love Brian Tracy, met him many times. And he's a great person, and he definitely is the beacon of the self-improvement and goal setting. But to answer your question, goals, you have to know where you're going in life. Otherwise, you're on someone else's agenda.
Absolutely. Hey, so in the book, you've also got a way to set goals. But I'm just going to ask you, like at a high level, for people who are listening, how would you recommend someone starting out setting goals for themselves?
Number one is take a piece of paper that's near you, or get on Evernote or a Word document and start writing it down. That's one of the high reasons that a goal is never reached, is it's never written down. And I love goals. There's a thing called vision boarding. So if you want a new house or a better life, you take a picture of where you want to go, and then you make it your screensaver, and then you start visualizing things. And it's odd because I've gone back to my old vision boards, and I'm like, oh, I've accomplished that, and that. I haven't done that one yet, but it's still on the bucket list. And it's so powerful. And it's just taking those 5 to 10 minutes, literally writing it down, and then keeping it near you. Don't just write it down and then put it in a drawer at your home. Really take the time to reflect on it once a month. I have a reminder that comes in on my calendar. I use Google Calendar. Every morning it has my goals, 365 days a year. So the first thing I start at 7 in the morning, it pops up, it tells me my goals. So this way it's constantly reminding me where I'm going. And it's a real easy tool to use, and there's no cost to it. It's just having your goals in front of you.
Absolutely. It's funny you should say that, because I think there's a couple of things, especially with the advent of technology, as we've talked about, is there's ways to do that. So I do the same thing. I put, every morning it's like, go look at the vision board. And my vision board's actually on Prezi. So I actually just jump on and start looking at it every morning, and it forces me to look at it. But you can also obviously use something like Pinterest or whatever, your PowerPoint or whatever you feel like using. But absolutely. Appreciate that input. Hey, so one of the things that I saw in the book that I thought it came back to me as I started going through it again. I thought it's funny because I think a lot of people don't realize this sort of stuff, but the difference between action and accomplishment. And I thought, you know what? I looked at it and I go, man, that's something I got to ask you is, can you tell people what is the difference between action and accomplishment and what it means to them?
I think action is the most powerful thing in the world. We've all been in the meetings that everyone's talking and talking and talking. And then you ask yourself, are we going to do anything? You kind of ask yourself, are we just here to have a meeting? One of the things when I was at American Express, I probably shouldn't even cite their name. Let's just say a big company.
Yeah.
We had
I might be able to take this out afterwards. So yeah, we'll just say a big company. So sorry.
A big company. We had this joke in the main office. It says, you want to waste time, hold a meeting.
Yeah.
And it's true. So action, you might feel like you're accomplished because you just had a meeting, but action out of that meeting is more powerful. You have to have the action, the activity. Anyone can say, oh, I'm going to make 30 cold calls today or 30 things. But so what? If you didn't make action of those 30 calls, then you've done nothing. You may feel like you've accomplished something at the end of the day because you got someone's proposal to them, but really at the end of the day, the action or the activity is the most important part of selling.
Mm-hmm. And of course, that obviously leads to the accomplishment and making sure that you hit your goals. I think, you had in the book, and I'm trying to remember where it was, I'm trying to leaf through right now, is more meetings, more, I'll find it here eventually. But it was a good way of putting it. Basically, it's and not to keep going back to Brian Tracy, but he was saying almost the exact same stuff that you've got in here. A little differently though, was just get up every morning. You want to double your meetings, make double the amount of activity. Here it is: more appointments equals more closed calls equals more sales equals more income. And that's where it came down to the actions versus accomplishment. And that's what I thought. I think that's killer. So if anyone's going out and buying the book, page 39, that's where you start reading this stuff. But I think it's phenomenal stuff. Great information, obviously. So, hey, one of the things I saw in here that I thought was important was, the difference between a unique selling proposition versus a unique value proposition. And my question to you is, what's the key difference between the two, and why is it important to a salesperson?
Well, it's important to a salesperson because I used to sell to attorneys, and I used to have roughly about 5 to 10 minutes to go through the whole presentation. So you had to be very organized, diligent, and you had to know your stuff. And I kind of always said this, let me think about it. Obviously, most people know that objection. And I came up with something. I go, you know what? That's great. I appreciate your time, and I really look forward to seeing you again. But if I can be so bold, this is what's going to happen. The minute I leave, you're going to be on to something else. And about 5 minutes from now, you're going to kind of forget my name. And about 10 minutes from now, you're going to forget the company I represented. And about 15 minutes from now, you're going to forget the entire conversation. So I go, that's just how people are. And I go, we get over inundated with a lot of information. And of course, they would laugh because it was accurate. I mean, I know when I meet people and I haven't made a point of action, I kind of drift off, and unless that person follows up with me, I've kind of forgotten it too. And it's human behavior. So during that, and then I'd say, well, let's take that 15 minutes now and think about it. Is it price? Is it value? Is it something I said? Is it something that you don't believe in? And I would get out there. But during that context, or when I was handling that objection, I would go back to the unique value proposition. And you need to discover what that is. In other words, if it's been your time in business, if it's been your success rate, your rankings, your testimonials, or whatever makes you unique, you need to reflect back on that. And then your unique selling position is exactly what you, the salesperson, are bringing to the table and what makes you unique, and what's the products and services that you're offering that are unique to complement that unique value proposition. But it's really important in selling to understand what makes you unique. And if you're not unique, you got to really step back and think about why you are unique. For example, I believe I use a pizza shop. If you're from Italy and you're in a pizza shop, well, that's what makes you unique. Your heritage to make that pizza, and your techniques, and you need to describe that to your audience. Otherwise, they think, oh, it's just another pizza. No, it's not another pizza. I get my ingredients from here. I get this from here. We bake at a higher level. Our bread is homemade in the back. And if your audience doesn't understand that, then frankly, they don't see the unique value or your unique selling proposition.
Absolutely. I think, that's one of the bigger things that I think a lot of salespeople actually fail on or fall down on is how not only are you unique, but how can you leverage what you sell, your service or your product, to make them unique and really differentiate yourself from your competitors on that sort of stuff. And it's, yeah, I'm glad you bring up the point that someone needs to step back and really think hard about that. If someone has to step back and think hard about it, what would be like the first thing you'd say to yourself? How would you get someone to step back and look and think about how they're unique or how their product or service is unique?
That's my favorite. That's an awesome question, Chris, because this is what I find in my consulting practice and in my sales practice, is that we're so busy doing things that we don't know what adds up. And we try these random things, and I'm still guilty of it too. Maybe I'll try postcards or a telemarketer or this or that. I mean, I'm constantly tweaking my own style and my own approach, because I'm always trying to figure out a better mousetrap, faster. What can I do to cut steps, or what's more efficient? What can I be saying on the calls? What can I be saying on the calls? And one of the things that I think is overlooked the most is go back to your top 10 customers. Invite them to an event or a dinner, or send them a survey and give them a gift card if they fill out the survey, and get that information from people where they've already bought from you. And what you can do with that information is scale it. You could say, here's why people buy from Mike or Chris. This is why this is this. And it gives you a persona or a testimonial to scale to other people, because your next prospect is probably very similar to your best client. And then you can find better people to become customers by that prospecting method. And then also people are relatable. They're like, oh, I didn't know you did gyms, and he's in the auto business, and this you're calling on Tom. Now they feel like you're an expert in that industry, and it's a powerful, cheap way to do things. You can use SurveyMonkey. You can take them to a baseball game. You can take them to dinner. You can give them a gift card for their time, and then you get valuable information out of your current customers. Stop always trying to hunt, and really reflect on where you've been successful in the past.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, guy, I want to be cognizant of your time here, but also a couple of things I want to ask you about. So I'm going to ask you, what is your most favorite prospecting process or methodology or method, online and offline?
Online by far is LinkedIn. That's how you and I met.
Yep.
So if you're not on LinkedIn, you're really losing some of your potential business. Now, I'm not saying that's the silver bullet, because I'm still looking for the silver bullet. And I'm sure Chris is still looking for the silver bullet, and that's why he has this program, is to help find that silver bullet. But at the end of the day, it's joining LinkedIn, getting into groups, just like what I mentioned with the survey. If you find out there's common threads like, oh, wow, I didn't realize all my customers belong to ABC organization, then guess what? Become a member of ABC organization. Get on a group of ABC organization on LinkedIn and join those people and start talking to your future customers. That's really the key is LinkedIn, have a professional photo, have a nice bio, join some groups, get in some discussions, and also take this with a word of caution. Don't spend hours on it a day. Maybe 15 minutes. It's not going to be the silver bullet, and it's not going to make the needle move that fast, that quickly for you. The other thing, offline, it's a blend. There's no, again, silver bullet. And back in the 90s, early 90s, there used to be like 6 ways to advertise your business. The traditional radio, TV, billboard, buying little local advertisements in the penny saver or what have you. Now there's like 50. You got Pinterest, you have Twitter, you have all these social media widgets, LinkedIn, radio, TV, blogcasts, iPod, the list goes on and on. So where do you pick your battle? Where should you stand? And that's a blend. And offline is networking. Find where your customers are going and join those organizations. Networking by far is one of the most powerful things. 28% of the average business is by referral from a networking organization. The other 28% is from online, and the rest of it's just miscellaneous. That doesn't come up to 28%, but it's just miscellaneous things that you could be doing. But going back to blend, do some cold calls on foot. Make some cold calls over the phone. Ask for referrals. Get in some networking groups. And then every now and then do a targeted mailer. My book is based on mails or letters or emails, and it's a methodical process to see if that prospect is interested in your service.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah. And obviously, once again, I'm gonna smart prospecting that works every time. It is one of those things. It's a methodology, a process. I recommend people go and get it. There's multiple things in here. I love the fact you got a whole bunch of technology stuff in here, and it was great because I went through and looked at it, and there's stuff I'd never even seen before that I thought was interesting and started to actually implement myself. Worth it that way. Hey, so the one last question I'm going to ask you is, and I ask pretty much every person I interview, every author I interview, is what's the best piece of advice that you could give to anyone who's in a sales profession or even in a marketing profession or business development profession? What would you say is the best piece of advice you could give them?
Number one, don't give up. It's hard in the beginning of a new sales career, or if you're a veteran. Go back to the fundamentals. Don't make this complicated. It's about activity. If your goal is to do 30 calls a day, then do those calls every day. Set that time, set those goals, just like Brian Tracy, set that goals. Sit down and set where you want to be in a year, and not 5 years. Just make these short-term attainable goals. And, you can't eat an elephant one bite. You can eat an elephant only one bite at a time. And I find like some people go, oh, wow, I got my new quota. How am I going to get there? How you're going to get there is melt down the quota to a day-to-day manageable activity. So to answer that question is don't give up. Have a plan and be diligent to yourself. Hold yourself accountable. There's only so much your manager or senior vice presidents can do for you. At the end of the day, they're employing us as salespeople to drive revenue, and we need to figure that out. If you have certain tools that you need, you find a way to work around it and be flexible. So go back to your fundamentals, be flexible, and have some goals. And I think that's really the key to success in selling.
Awesome advice. Awesome advice. Hey, so Michael, I appreciate it. Or sorry, let me call you Mike instead. I appreciate you taking the time out to talk to us today. Once again, how can anybody get a hold of you should they want to reach out to you?
Okay. Yes. Thank you so much, Chris. I really applaud you putting this show together. I think it helps a lot of people and it gets many different perspectives. So good for you. Kudos to you.
Thanks, we
And
appreciate
again,
that.
I can be reached at mdkrause.com, mdkrause.com. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm a pretty open networker, so just send me an invite and I usually accept it. And then also go to Amazon.com or your local Barnes and Noble. My book is available on the shelf at Barnes and Noble, and pick up the book. It's well worth the money to spend, $12 to $18 depending on where you buy it. And going back to how Chris kicked it off, the average person only has 5 days of sales training, so you need to invest in yourself. Buy some books from great people like Brian Tracy, Gittermore, Tom Hopkins, just to name a few, and really study the craft of selling. It's really going to help you make your life easier because there are certain techniques and skills that can make your life easier, and it doesn't have to be so frustrating.
Absolutely. You know what? I always say this about people with with a book is if you can pick one thing out of a book, think of it this way: you just hit the nail on the head. Like your book's $18. I'll tell you what. There's more than one thing, obviously, I could pull out of this, but I will more than make that money back just by deploying that one thing that you taught me. And I mean, it's amazing. So, absolutely agree with that. And a final stat: I think they say that the average CEO reads 60 books a year, and I think the average person reads one book every 7 years. And I think that's what it is. Don't quote me on that. People would have to look it up. But I saw that stat online somewhere, and that's mind blowing to me that people just do not read or try to educate themselves. So I appreciate you taking the time out. Great book, and we look forward to talking to you sometime in the future again.
Thank you so much, Chris, and to your listeners, have a great week, and I hope you have a very productive day.
Great, thank you.